Hi everyone, my name is James Boston. I'm the founder of the Association of Former British Colonies. I'm joined here today by Arley Gill, and today's topic is going to discuss the legacies of British colonisation in Grenada. A bit about the Association of Former British Colonies before we introduce our guest. So, our aim is to examine the legacies of British colonisation through educational content, social dialogue, uh, and we seek to inform UK and global policy change around the topic of decolonisation and reparations. To help us to unpick this from the perspective of Grenada and to learn more, Arlie, I'd like to welcome you to our platform. And if you could give our viewers an introduction to yourself, please.
Thank you very much. And first of all, allow me to applaud your efforts with regards to this very important work which you're embarking upon. And I believe that is, very timely as well, especially now in the era of where reparations is arguably one of the hottest global topic for discussion. I'm Grenadian. I'm the chairman of the Grenada National Reparations Committee, and I'm happy to be here with you.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us. So, tell us a bit about yourself, your background, why reparations is a passion of yours.
Reparation not just a passion; it's a duty. It's an obligation. It's a call to service. I'm an attorney by profession. I'm an attorney at law. That's my day job, basically. But also, I was a former minister of government in Grenada with responsibility for culture and information communication technology. I was also a former Grenada ambassador to CARICOM. CARICOM, of course, is the Caribbean Community, the umbrella body, similar to what you have as the EU. I also was chairman of Carnival. I was a chairman of the UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage Convention. So I've wear quite a few hats throughout my time in different areas of service. And reparations is one other area of service. So I believe that our energies, our resources here in the Caribbean, as much as is possible, must be made available to championing the cause for reparations. Reparations for native genocide, the genocide of our first peoples, the Amerindians, as they were called, the Arawaks and Kalinagos, Tainos, and so on and so forth. And also for the horrors of the Atlantic slave trade and chattel slavery in the English speaking and in the Caribbean and wherever else, So, as I indicated, I believe that the issue of reparation is not just a passion. I think it's a duty, it's an obligation, it's a call to service.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Why did Britain colonize Grenada?
But Britain would have colonized Grenada for the very same reasons it would have colonized other islands in the Caribbean. At that period of time in the 1600s, 1700s, European powers, they were expanding, looking for new territories for trade, for investments, and so on. And as the history goes, Christopher Columbus happened upon these islands here in the Caribbean. Grenada happened to be one of them. He passed through in 1492. That's when he had sight of it. The French was the first to inhabit here. Not inhabit, sorry, but the first European country to have come here. And they had a bitter war with the first peoples, the Kalinago peoples, in 1651, which ended up in the slaughter, genocide, and the stealing of the lands of the Kalinago people. Now, throughout the 1700s, Grenada changed hands about twice from the British to the English, to the French, sorry, as they look for more territories to invest in agriculture, tobacco, cane, indigo, and the likes. Grenada is basically was a former island that did a lot of sugar. On the neighboring island of Carriacou, because it's Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, they did a lot of cotton in the island of Carriacou. So that the agricultural crops that was most economically viable throughout the period of slavery and slave trade um, were planted here in Grenada. And I think it would be fair to say that the British colonized Grenada first and foremost to look for lands and economic opportunities. You see, economics and finance is what drove this period of European expedition and exploration. And Grenada, as well as the other Caribbean islands, would have been happened upon by these Europeans during that era of European civilization.
Okay, so that brings me nicely on to my second question. So, how did British colonization in particular impact the population of Grenada?
It impacted the population of Grenada, and for one, it would not be fair to say that the British was responsible for the genocide of the first peoples in Grenada. The French was.
Okay.
But what we do know is that the surviving Kalinago people post French, um, they had their challenges with the British. But where the British really impacted the population is through the slave trade from about 1771 to 1804 or 1808 or thereabouts, 1808, you would have had about 550 registered slave ships coming to Grenada, bringing approximately 129,000 Africans to Grenada to be enslaved. So that the population was transformed from indigenous Amerindian people to dominantly persons of African origin. Of course, you'd have had a minority Caucasian British population as they were here as massa to run the plantations. And of course, Grenada suffered with absentee plant owners who remained in England and sent other persons to work for them to manage their businesses here in the Caribbean. So you had a small pocket of white population, but the population was dominated by Africans. You had a few, one or two pockets of Amerindians. Then later on, after the abolition of the slave trade, you would have had Indian indentureship. And Grenada do proudly have a few Indian enclaves, I call them, or Indian communities, East Indian communities, as opposed to the Amerindian Indians. So we have a couple East Indian communities still on the island. So in summary, one can say that the British colonization impacted Grenada's economy by one, making the Grenadian society dominantly of African origin, with small pockets of Caucasian and East Indian and a few sprinklings of First Peoples here on island.
Okay, so that's a kind of historical overview. How would you say that British colonization continues to impact the present day populations of Grenada? So, for example, in terms of inequalities, are they examples of multi-generational trauma? Are the indigenous populations completely extinct, or are there surviving elements of their culture at all?
The British colonization of Grenada impacted and created lasting legacies of, of intergenerational poverty in Grenada. You have to understand in 1974, 7th February, Grenada got independence. And the British never made any significant investment before then or after with regards to the Grenadian society. On independence, Grenada was left with one or two schools, which was poorly equipped, poorly staffed. Indeed, persons who had completed primary school education, the brighter ones, were given jobs to teach those who are now coming through the ranks of the schools. So we did not benefit from trained teachers upon independence. So we had poor education system, poor healthcare systems. Then obviously on independence, our government of the day had to borrow from regional and international lending institutions to pay basic things in terms of salary and so on. So that because when the British left, there was no arrangement made by the British for any sort of financial sustainability here in Grenada. None whatsoever. We had to build from scratch. And so poor education, poor healthcare, the road networks are designed in such a way to facilitate the export to Britain of crops, right? Of agricultural crops, to facilitate the trade of agricultural crops, the road networks. You will see as well the communities that, or village communities that were established post-emancipation. They are constructed or settled, persons settled. Persons who used to work on the plantations settled for areas less arable lands surrounding the population, surrounding the plantations. So their communities, you could have seen they could have only had small garden plots and so on because it was stony area, so to speak, less fertile area that they had to settle on. So the very place where some of our early communities were set up were around the plantation or at least accessible to the population with very little arable lands. So we've had the legacy of poor education, poor health, um, limited land for working class Grenadians. Then also our diet with regards to the food that the enslaved people were fed, we continue same, but needless to say, chronic illnesses like hypertension and diabetes have afflicted our people. British colonization affected our relationship with Africa, being our motherland, and disrupted the linkage that our people had with their ancestors. So that, although I'm an African descent, I do not speak English, I do not speak any language of Africa. I do not, the clothes that we wear is generally European inspired at the very least. And our culture was disrupted. Culture of the early Grenadian Africans, was significantly disrupted. So that you will find that the impact of British colonization on Grenada as a whole covers a wide area. And all factual. It's not a case of giving an opinion, but it's an opinion derived from serious research and analysis.
Mm.
So from education to healthcare to dieting to road network to poverty, the British colonization of Grenada contributed significantly to a lot of the underdevelopment of Grenada, so to speak.
And are the indigenous people, have they completely been made extinct on the island? Or so, for example, in Jamaica, there seems to be some evidence that in pockets of Jamaica, particularly mountainous areas, the indigenous population survived by mixing with formerly enslaved Africans. Is that a similar case in Grenada at all?
Not at all. The indigenous population, by and large, is extinct in Grenada. We do have persons who are generations off indigenous population, but they're far and few in between. But generally, the Kalinago peoples, um, you don't see them anymore. There is no, unlike the Commonwealth of Dominica, where there is an area where the Kalinago people can call home. We do not have such a thing in Grenada, and as such, the all the inhabitants or first settlers are basically, for all intents and purposes, extinct.
It's a difficult one to swallow, isn't it?
Yep.
Moving on to the next question. So, do you think it's important to be aware of the history and the legacies of British colonization in Grenada? And how commonly is that being discussed in Grenada today?
It is discussed. Um, British colonization was taught in our schools, but from whose perspective?
Mm.
You have to understand that the British historians wrote Grenada history. French historians wrote the French part of the history. So that we are still grappling with Eurocentric education and Eurocentric perspective of our history. Yes, we learned about the pirates and the buccaneers. We learned about Columbus, the plantation, and so on and so forth. Um, but from a perspective of the conquered, of the persons who conquered us, who enslaved us, so that basically we have to relearn a lot of what we have been taught in schools, because these history texts and all the researchers gave a very Eurocentric perspective to what transpired. Africans here in Grenada, as the Americans would say, African Grenadians, we are not, we are never taught in schools anything about Africa and where we came from. In fact, any sort of hint that we would have had from the teacher with regards to Africa would have been something negative. Yeah. So the teaching of British colonization and all the related subjects as well, with regards to our history and to our past, is an area that needs to be revisited. Because I am of the respectful view that we are not doing justice to African history the way history has been taught in schools. Indeed, during National College time, I attempted to do both West Indian history and African history, and I was the only registered student to do the African history part, or to attempt to do that.
So, what steps do you think should be taken to decolonize the education system in Grenada?
One of which will be the introduction of Grenada-based textbooks
Mm.
in school. In fact, in September, we have here on Island Dr. Nicole Dow. She just wrote a history book for junior learners, higher secondary schools and low secondary schools to read. So we need authors, historians, to write about the great past of Grenada. Yes? So that's
Mhm.
one of the things. An introduction of history as a compulsory subject in the primary and secondary schools, in most of the secondary schools. In my time, history was basically mandatory, but now the children do not see history as important as we once saw it. So that to my mind lays a sort of foundation for the transformation of the education system in Grenada. History. In other words, persons being proud of themselves, being proud of their heritage, knows about the greatness of their ancestors and the kingdoms of Africa and so on. That, in my mind, needs to be done, but um, it arguably will take some time.
Okay. And is there an appetite for it in the sort of current government in Grenada?
Well, I'm not sure if the prime minister has spoken and he says, they're willing to listen if being pressured. But my point is that you don't have to listen to be pressured. You must take the leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
Just simply lead with regards to black consciousness, black pride, and so on and so forth. That needs to be done. So I'm not certain whether or not a change of personnel in terms of leadership would make a difference, unless we have a complete transformation of the education system, stretching from the primary right up to the secondary school.
So we've talked a bit about decolonizing the education system. In terms of decolonizing Grenada as a whole, what are your views on how that process is best started?
Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but you see. So that I think it is a mental emancipation. We are no longer in chains and so on and so forth. But I think the beginning of um, decolonization, mental decolonization, begins with ourselves, begins with our minds, begins with what we dress, begins with the names that we name our children. We name our children all these European names. Quote unquote, they need to have these Christian names and so on. You know, the whitewashing of African traditions and has terribly affected us psychologically, so that we are no longer proud, really, to be who we are. You know, persons may say, yes, I'm proud to be Grenadian, I'm proud to be African, and so on, but in the subconscious, in the back of the heads, they do everything that demonstrates they really are not proud of the heritage and the culture. So, to answer your question directly, I think education got a critical role to play, both formal and informal. Formal in terms of the classrooms, but also to on television and radio and so on and so forth. There should be educational and promotional programs so that persons get to understand the African traditions, the African culture, what this means to do, what this have to do, and so on and so forth. I think that is where it really begins, to be honest. It is not something that I expect to change overnight. I think it's a process. But that process better start soon so that we can realize some sort of transformation in the minds and in the thoughts and in the actions of African people here in Grenada.
And I suppose it's a big conversation. We've interviewed people from other former British colonies, from Bangladesh to Jamaica, for example, and they've also talked about the legacies of British colonization in the legal system and how many discriminatory colonial era laws still actually exist and are still part of the independent country's legal system. So to give an example, there was a really good article that I came across recently. I think it was written in 2019 about African spirituality still being illegal in the Jamaican legal system as a kind of hangover from the British colonial era. Are there examples of colonial era laws in Grenada that you feel are no longer applicable in a modern, progressive, decolonized Grenada?
Flogging
Mm.
as a penal punishment through the court system, persons can still be flogged legally in Grenada. That's a law that was passed before 1974. And you know the issue of flogging on the plantations. Flogging was one of the main means by which the massa tried to control the slaves. Now, just to continue to speak with regards to legacies, our police force is called the Royal Grenada Police Force.
Mhm.
Our prison, our lone prison on island is called His Majesty's Prison. Right? The Queen is still the head of state. Governor General, or the King is still head of state through the Governor General. We steal our oaths, our national oath, with regards to when ministers have been sworn into government and so on. They swear an oath to allegiance to the King. The Privy Council continues to remain our final appellate court in Grenada. So that these legacies that we speak of, is all around us, all around us. Our streets, our schools, and so on. Many of them are named after former British enslavers and colonial administrators. All these things need to change, so that you will find that in all different sectors of society, there is some lingering legacy that remains of British colonization that serves, I believe, not merely as a reminder to us of where we came from, but also in a sense to keep us in check. It's there. It's all around us. It's all around us.
So you mentioned obviously the king being head of state. We've seen Barbados, Jamaica recently announce, and I think Barbados have already actioned this, that they would remove the royal family, the monarch, as head of state. Is there any appetite for that to happen in Grenada?
I think there is appetite, just that there is no action.
Okay.
We have the Reparations Committee. We had a lecture with a month ago with ECR Republicanism in terms of heightening awareness around republicanism. But the
Hmm.
government has not formally and officially started the process of, first of all, educating the Grenadian masses with regards to the issue of republicanism, or in any
Right.
way setting up any sort of a structure to put in place the movement from a monarchical system to republic. I must tell you, though, that we've had a few referendums in recent years, and the government of the day would have lost in terms of removing the Privy Councilor's final appellate court and so on and so forth. So that there is still a bit of conservatism in the society, that arguably maybe hold on to these English traditions there. And
Mm.
of course, we were almost enemies with regards to this referendum, because you will find that political parties, rather than seeing the national importance of it, they would have played political football.
Right. Okay, let's move to the final section of the interview where I want to focus on reparations. So, first question: where is Grenada at with the reparations movement?
Grenada is in the forefront of the reparation movement in the
Hmm.
Caribbean. The National Reparations Committee is part of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, which was set up by the heads of CARICOM governments. But
Hmm.
we have made significant strides since coming on board in March 15, 2021. We have had probably the biggest um, gesture of reparations through the Trevelyan family in Grenada, which made global news and so. And we are in right now in the process of discussing with other families who want to do likewise.
Hmm.
And so very much we are active. We continue to agitate and to lobby and to put pressure on those who should make repair for the damages which they have caused to come on board. So we're ready to, in all intents and purposes, remain to be part of the leadership for reparations in the Caribbean.
And can you explain for our viewers why do you feel that Grenada is owed reparations by Britain particularly, and what difference do you think it would make?
We owe reparations because, one, the first settlers in Grenada suffered from genocide, native genocide. They were slaughtered by the French in 1651. Their lands were taken, their lands were stolen. As I indicated to you, over about 100 years from 1771, not even 100 if all that, over 100,000, 129,000 recorded Africans were brought to the island of Grenada. Our population now is roughly 110,000. On emancipation, um, over 23,000 was free. And that begs the question, what happened to all these people who came on the island? And just to think that, one, human beings procreate, they make children. In other words, if you land 129,000 persons here, if you come back 9 months later, that population should double at the very least. What has happened is that populations have shrunk. So it speaks to
Mm.
the wanton abuse, neglect, and the subsequent death of Africans on the plantations here in Grenada. Not to mention those who died on during the slave trade. Now, this period of, and of course, you appreciate that during slavery and so on, these enslaved persons were not paid. They were brutalized at the
Mm.
very least. And that damage, the legacies of slavery, with regards to the psychological harm, with regards to the intergenerational poverty that it has created, regards to the health issues that afflict our people, the high literacy rate, and so on and so forth, means that tremendous harm, the underdevelopment of Grenada, can be directly linked to the slave trade and slavery. The underdevelopment of Grenada. And I say this, and people say, well, you Grenada and so on, you guys not. Listen, we are proud of what we have achieved on our own and for ourselves. We're not relying on, we're not depending on the British to survive, to have tertiary education and to provide our children with meals and clothing and shelter. But at the same time, the British must own up to the fact that they have created damage to our people. They have created damage to our society. And despite our own efforts to develop ourselves, should not take away the responsibility and the obligation of the British government, the monarchy, the institutions, and individuals who benefited directly and indirectly from the slave trade and slavery to own up to the wanton massacre of the First Peoples. When we speak of slavery, people say, oh, there's slavery elsewhere in the world. What we had in Grenada was what we call chattel slavery, where human beings were considered to be a piece of property. Lloyds of London would have insured Africans as a thing, as a property. And planters would have benefited, made a claim through the insurance. And on top of that abuse, in 1833, when the Emancipation Act was passed, compensation was given to the planters for the loss of property. What's the property? Loss of slaves. So how can you explain that you compensate the planters who own slaves some 20 million pounds at a time, a debt which the British government only paid back to Rothschild Bank in 2015, a debt which at the time was 47% or so of the British expenditure in the year 1834. You compensated the planters, and the persons who work for free under the worst conditions imaginable, they were never compensated. Now, if that does not bleed the heart and the conscience of man, I don't know what would. And that is why we say there is damage caused and repair need to be made.
So what needs to happen in order for reparations to actually manifest on a political level so that it can then begin to repair some of the legacies that you're talking about?
Well, we need to come around the table with the British government, have a sit down with the British government, the British monarchy, institutions like the Church of England that are trying, Lloyds of London, some of your universities, and so on. And let us have a discussion with regards to how you can make repair. Within the CARICOM initiative, we have put together a 10-point CARICOM plan. In other words, when we speak of reparations, we're not asking for a blank check or for cash, just like that. We're asking for investments in our education, in our healthcare. We're asking for debt cancellation. We're talking about African cultural studies and so on and so forth. We're asking for repatriation. For years, the Rastafarian community say they want to go back to Africa and so on, because our ancestors were kidnapped and forcibly removed from Africa to here. So I would, ask your listeners to Google the 10-point CARICOM plan so that they have a full understanding of what is it we're asking for. But sometimes when we speak of reparations, people think we're just asking for money. Just like that. But we're asking for a development plan, development program so that we can lift the lots of our people. We're not just simply asking for money in our pockets to buy fancy cars. and clothing and big houses. No, we want to be able to make sure that our society, that no one is left behind, that every household would have had university graduates, that every household would have in-house plumbing and running clean water and so on and so forth. Yes, I mean, as I said, we have tried our very best with limited resources that we've had since independence. But of course, there is no way we could reach a level of development as you guys in the UK. Anytime we develop, you go 10 pieces ahead of us, if not more. And in part of the reparations, the 10-point CARICOM plan, we ask for technology transfer. Do you really think an island like Grenada could buy all the latest technology in communication and different things that you in the UK enjoy? Why don't you transfer some of those technologies to us for free so that it can better enhance the quality of our lives? You know, slavery and the slave trade was the fuel for the British Industrial Revolution.
Hmm.
That's a historical fact, you know. So that is what we speak of when we speak of reparations and so. So that is the kind of practical steps which is sit down, a discussion between us here in the Caribbean and the leaders in the UK to discuss the issue of reparations. And your Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is on the wrong side of history. You would have seen recently the King of the Netherlands apologized. The Prime Minister on December 19th, Mark Rutte, apologized. Why is it the British government and the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister and so on thinks that reparation, um, why is it that the British society and its leadership believe that saying that slavery was wrong and apologizing for the part that you have played, why is that so far-fetched? An apology is the first part of our 10-point plan. We say you must apologize. And secondly, you must make repair. What is so difficult? What is so wrong about doing the right thing? You know, in the British society, you're mostly Christians, but of course you have other religions. But religions speak to the issue of repentance and forgiveness for your sins. You know, for you to get forgiveness for your sins, you have to repent. You have to admit that you sin. Why is it that the British leadership cannot admit that the persons before them would have sinned and that the benefits that you enjoy came as a result of other persons who suffered? That's what it is.
I'll make sure that I put a link to the CARICOM reparations 10-point plan in the description of this video, because I think it's a really important point that you highlight around the misconceptions about what reparations is. You often hear people trying to debate or refute the idea of reparations, and they often characterize it as just a payoff, for example. But actually, what CARICOM are talking about is much more
Of
kind of,
course.
yeah, it's
And,
much,
and, and reparations as well, you must make the point, is not charity.
yeah.
We're not asking for aid.
Hmm.
As I've heard some British MPs talk about, let's give them aid because they know. Aid and grant is well and good, you know, but aid and grant and so on, you see somebody in need, you assist them as human beings ought to. Be your brother's keeper. Yes? But when we speak of reparations, we say you have an obligation. That's a duty.
Mm.
That is something that you owe. So it's not charity. You have caused damage. You're liable. And so, you know, you're responsible for your actions and you must make repair. So, you know, reparations as well must be distinguished from the issue of charity.
Mm. Absolutely. Okay, I think we will wrap up the interview there. Can you tell our audience how they can support this cause, how they might be able to contact yourself, for example?
Well, first of all, the people in the UK, what they can do is agitate with the MPs to begin with, their political representatives, to say to them that the issue of reparations to them means a lot. Just as the Germans have made reparations to the Jews for the Holocaust,
Mm.
you believe that no, the British must do similar. So I believe lobbying members of parliament, community groups, church leaders, and so on. It's an excellent place to begin. Start the agitation on the ground in the UK, and of course you can go online, look up the CARICOM Reparations Commission, and you can make contact with me and other leaders throughout the region who are leading the struggle with regards to reparative justice. But of course, don't feel that you're not empowered. You're empowered in every little community, school, church that you find yourself in the UK, and you can, agitate to your leaders that this issue of reparations should be dealt with. And by so doing, you'll be doing a great service in the cause of mankind and in the just cause of reparations.
Thank you very much, Ali. And for our audience, you can follow the Association of Former British Colonies on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and look out for future events and future interviews. And feel free to contact us if you have any inquiries, any questions, or you'd like to be involved in the reparations and decolonisation movement. Ali, thank you again, and thank you everybody for listening.
My pleasure. Have a wonderful day.